At the break of dawn, before alarm clocks or morning traffic, a small human band stirs in the shadow of a limestone cave. The fire has dwindled to glowing embers, and the cold of night still lingers in the air. But life waits for no one. One person quietly feeds the fire, another scans the horizon, while others prepare for the day's work. This is no savage scene. It's a moment of resilience, strategy, and purpose. Welcome to the world of our Paleolithic ancestors, innovators, survivors, and perhaps the most adaptable humans to ever walk the earth. When we think of cavemen, outdated images come to mind: club-wielding brutes, dragging women, and grunting nonsense. But this couldn't be further from the truth. The people of the Paleolithic era, stretching from 2.6 million years ago to around 12,000 years ago, lived a life of staggering complexity. They were more than hunters and gatherers. They were firekeepers, artists, scientists of nature, and early architects of society. Over 99% of human history unfolded in this era. So the real question is, what did they actually do all day? To uncover that, we turn to the archaeological record stone tools. Hearths, food remnants, cave art, and even the occasional piece of worked wood or ancient textile. Through these fragile windows into the past, we piece together not just their survival, but their humanity. Morning in the Paleolithic world didn't begin with coffee, it began with necessity. The fire that kept the group alive overnight had to be rekindled. Starting fire from scratch was difficult, so embers were carefully preserved. Sites like Terra Amata in France, dating back nearly 400,000 years, show evidence of maintained hearths. These fires weren't just for warmth. There were shields against predators, kitchens for cooking, and social centers for storytelling. Water had to be fetched often from nearby streams, using animal bladders or woven baskets. Food, always a top concern, needed to be found. The group would assess what the land offered that day. Were tools dull or broken? Did the season suggest berries, roots, or migrating animals? These early humans weren't blindly wandering. They were reading the world like a book, with each season offering new pages. Contrary to popular belief, Paleolithic societies weren't defined by rigid gender roles. While men often hunted larger game, women gathered plants and also hunted smaller animals.
Yes.
But the tasks weren't fixed. Everyone did what was needed. Flexibility and cooperation were the backbone of survival. Children were not sidelined. They watched, learned, and slowly took on adult responsibilities, not in schools, but through immersion in daily life. The hunt was never a guaranteed success. Early humans started as scavengers, but evolved into organized hunters. By 500,000 years ago, at places like Boxgrove in England, we find evidence of sophisticated hunting techniques, a horse bone with a spear wound, for instance. This wasn't luck, it was skill. At Schigningen in Germany, archaeologists discovered wooden spears balanced perfectly for throwing. Crafted 400,000 years ago, these were the first javelins. Later, humans invented the Atlatla spear thrower that increased range and accuracy. And eventually, the bow and arrow appeared around 20,000 years ago. These inventions weren't just tools, they were survival innovations born from intelligence, experimentation, and deep environmental understanding. But it wasn't all about meat. In fact, plants made up a more reliable part of the Paleolithic diet. Nuts, seeds, fruits, tubers, and greens were collected and prepared with remarkable knowledge. Studies of dental remains reveal residues of dozens of plant species, including medicinal ones. These weren't random pickings. They reflected generations of observation, memory, and teaching. Depending on the season, the daily menu shifted. Spring offered eggs and shoots, summer brought berries and fish. Autumn was harvest time for nuts and roots, and winter demanded stored meat or scavenged game. Some food was dried into jerky. In colder regions, frozen meat stored in pits helped people get through brutal months. Even without refrigeration or agriculture, these humans had strategies. Their diet was often more varied and more nutritious than the early farmers who followed them. Fire didn't just warm them or cook their food, it transformed their lives. Cooked food released more calories, neutralized plant toxins, and made chewing and digestion easier. It also created timeless time spent chewing raw tubers meant more time for innovation. planning, and art. Toolmaking, too, was an art form. It didn't happen occasionally, it was part of daily life. Early stone tools were crude, but by 1.7 million years ago, hand axes emerged with symmetrical shapes and sharp edges. The Middle Paleolithic brought about the live technique, carefully prepared cores for flake control, and the Upper Paleolithic. That was a revolution. Scrapers, awls, bone needles, spear points, and carving tools. All showing a deep understanding of materials and purpose. Not all tools were stone. Though wood rarely survives finds like the Clacton spear, and others show how humans shaped wood with care. Understanding its grain and flexibility, bone and antler became key resources, carved into harpoons, fishhooks, sewing needles, and more. Containers also evolved from natural shells and gourds to woven baskets, and eventually, the earliest pottery. Clothing too was critical, especially during the Ice Age. Animal hides were scraped clean with stone tools, sewn with bone needles, and designed for warmth and mobility. These weren't just rags, they were survival gear crafted with care. Now let's talk homes. Caves were only part of the story. Places like Lascaux in France offered shelter and left us beautiful cave paintings. Most humans lived in constructed huts. At Terra Amata, archaeologists uncovered large oval structures made with wooden posts and stone foundations. In Ukraine, mammoth bones were arranged into circular foundations, ingenious shelters for cold weather, covered with hides and thatched materials. These homes were organized. Central hearths provided heat and light. Around them, sleeping areas, tool stations, and food prep zones. Trash was moved outside to specific dumping areas. Even then, humans knew the value of cleanliness. Even in sickness or injury, Paleolithic people cared for each other. Skeletons show healed broken bones and long-term disabilities, proof that people were supported long after their productive years. This wasn't just survival, it was compassion. And then came night. As darkness fell, the fire burned brighter, and stories likely flowed. Around that fire, knowledge was passed down: how to track an animal, which plants could cure illness, and tales of spirits or ancestors. These moments shaped belief systems and reinforced social bonds. Art became a mirror of the mind. At Blombos Cave in South Africa nearly 100,000 years ago, we find ochre carvings. By 40,000 years ago, cave paintings bloomed across Europe. These weren't random doodles. They were symbolic, deliberate, and meaningful. Animals leapt across stone walls. Dots and lines may have represented calendars or messages. Portable art figurines, beads, and carved tools showed how early humans valued beauty, identity, and meaning. Music, too, was part of the Paleolithic soul. Bone flutes from Germany, dating back over 40,000 years, were tuned to modern scales. These instruments, spared with drums or hollowed logs, suggest not just rhythm, but emotion, ceremony, and shared joy. Medicine was no stranger either. Plant residues found in dental plaque include natural antibiotics and painkillers. Some cave art may even depict shamanic journeys, human-animal hybrids in strange postures, possibly representing visions or altered states. Our ancestors weren't just survivors, they were explorers of consciousness. Despite hardship, large-scale violence appears to have been rare. While some injuries show trauma, most evidence points to cooperation, not conflict. Abundant resources and small populations likely reduced warfare. Instead, trade networks connected groups. Obsidian, shells, and pigments traveled hundreds of miles, suggesting ongoing exchange, both material and cultural. May above all else, Paleolithic humans were masters of their environments. They weren't at nature's mercy, they shaped it. Aboriginal fire management in Australia, dating back 65,000 years, helped create biodiversity through controlled burning. In Europe, they tracked migration routes. In Asia, they followed monsoon patterns. Everywhere they read the signs of the land and adapted with stunning precision. Their lives required encyclopedic knowledge. Each person knew how to gather, hunt, craft, treat injuries, tell stories, and navigate the seasons. They weren't specialists, they were everything all at once. Botanists, engineers, artists, and survivalists. Their tools, though primitive by today's standards, solved real problems with ingenuity. More than anything, Paleolithic people laid the foundations of humanity. Symbolism, cooperation, language, music, and innovation, these weren't gifts of civilization. They were born in the firelight of the Paleolithic night. So what did cavemen do all day? They planned, they hunted, they gathered, they cooked, they crafted, they built, they taught, they dreamed, they survived. And they did it not as brutes, but as brilliant, emotional, resilient humans. Just like us.